Good Wednesday afternoon, and thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Lauren Lemanchek. New today, a guilty plea in the Lily Peters murder case. Carson Petersberger pleading guilty to first-degree intentional homicide in the death of Lily. Petersberger was then sentenced to life in prison with a chance at parole after 25 years. 10-year-old Lily Peters was found dead near a walking trail in 2022, hours after being reported missing. Her cousin, who was 14 at the time, was charged with first-degree murder and sexual assault. New this afternoon, Meta is shelling out $18 billion to end a landmark lawsuit. The deal resolves claims from 29 states, including Minnesota, that the company's platforms, Facebook and Instagram, harm young people's mental health. Under the agreement, the payment will fund online youth safety initiatives, including here in Minnesota. Attorney General Keith Ellison says this is only the beginning.
We don't want this to be the end of the story. It should be a signal to the entire social media industry that it's time to transform how they safeguard young people online. Let this settlement be a template for them to follow. Along with others in our coalition, this office is committed to seeing change across the industry.
Minnesota will receive more than $200 million of that settlement. The social media giant is also imposing new daily time limits for teens. Meta does not admit to any wrongdoing as part of this settlement. Well, right now, a new report is revealing new details into the Annunciation Church shooting just one day before the one-year mark of that tragedy. 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel and 10-year-old Harper Moisky died in the shooting. 18 others were hurt on the first day of school mass. Our Jennifer Hoff is combing through the nearly 2,600 pages in that report.
A newly released report painting perhaps the clearest picture yet of the tragedy that unfolded at Annunciation Church and School last August. Spanning thousands of pages, it outlines never-before-seen interviews, photographic evidence, and the police response to the South Minneapolis shooting.
Were you surprised that the entire investigative report was released in the case of the Annunciation shooting?
Yeah, I'm really surprised that they released it kind of one big chunk and that they did it so close to the anniversary.
University of Alabama journalism professor Caitlin Miller is studying the impacts of school shootings and says reports like these can offer transparency, but are also deeply upsetting.
If we're not going to see direct change come from it, is there value in sharing it and reporting it? And I think that's what we have to figure out.
In this case, there's a detailed timeline of the shooter's movements caught on camera, the shooting itself lasting about 2 minutes, as well as interviews with the shooter's father and girlfriend, who both reported they had no concerns about the shooter's behavior. Followed by first responder accounts treating victims, clearing rooms, and crime lab reports as those most affected look to a day of reflection 1 year later.
It impacts more than just a community, right? It ripples across the country, and hopefully the release of this report doesn't take us backwards.
In the wake of the tragedy, the Annunciation community is continuing to move their feet, part of an African proverb used by the school's principal after the shooting. Minneapolis City Council honoring the victims, survivors, and families of Annunciation with a resolution recognizing their resilience, strength, faith, and kindness.
We didn't lose sight of that goal of building a future filled with hope. And perhaps the key word is the one not on the shirt, together. Together with our first responders that showed up that day and, as we heard, made miracles happen and saved lives.
On the one-year anniversary of the shooting tomorrow, Minneapolis is holding a day of service and remembrance at Pearl Park. Today, a St. Paul man accused of $125,000 of Medicaid fraud will make his first appearance in court. He's one of 7 people charged in what the Justice Department is calling the largest healthcare fraud takedown in the U.S. Court documents accuse Tremaine Lamar Jackson of defrauding the Minnesota Medical Assistance Program. According to the complaint, he claimed to provide more than 6,000 hours of services in Minnesota, including during a nearly 2-year period he was a basketball coach in Kansas. Jackson's charged with 8 felony counts of theft. Also happening today, 2 men convicted in the massive Feeding Our Future fraud scheme will face a judge for sentencing. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Minnesota, Ahmed Abdullahi Gadi and Abdi Hakim Ali Ahmed both claim to be operating child nutrition sites in St. Paul. Both pleaded guilty last year to wire fraud and money laundering. Happening today, we're expecting to learn if an ICE agent charged with shooting a man in Minnesota will be released from custody in Texas. Agent Christian Castro's charged with shooting Julio Sosa Solis in the leg during Operation Metro Surge. Castro originally said he shot in self-defense while being attacked with a snow shovel and a broom. But video evidence contradicts that, and federal officials have said they no longer believe Castro's story. Well, after Castro was charged in Hennepin County and he was arrested in Texas, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has refused to sign the extradition warrant, saying he needs more time to investigate the request.
I don't think we can emphasize this enough. Extradition is a routine administrative process. It isn't about politics, it is the law.
Now, Minnesota's attorneys arguing that they have not seen an extradition process take this long ever. The U.S. and Canadian tariff trade battle is hitting a new level today. Canada is now planning to match U.S. tariffs dollar for dollar. It comes in retaliation to President Trump's newest 50% tariffs. Canadian officials have announced new levies of 15 to 50% on more than 700 American goods. Canada also signaling it would consider cutting some exports to the U.S., a move that could especially hurt Minnesota. That's because our state has more imports and exports to Canada than any other country, exporting more than $5 billion in goods to Canada in the last year. If Canada cuts off some exports, it could include electricity, which could leave parts of Minnesota, New York, and Michigan in the dark. The new tariffs take effect on September 8th. A major change could be coming for absentee voters this November. The Supreme Court is allowing a federal plan to move forward, giving more power to Homeland Security and the post office over distribution. Danny Spiewak has a reaction to the ruling and the potential impacts here in Minnesota.
Despite voting by mail himself, President Trump frequently targets the mail-in balloting system as ripe for fraud, even though there's little evidence of that.
And there will be no mail-in ballots.
In March, the president issued an executive order restricting mail ballots. The order directed the Department of Homeland Security to create voter lists of all eligible citizens, which the Postal Service would use to determine who could receive a mail ballot.
The problem is it's kind of a murky black box. We're not allowed to be looking inside of that, knowing how they come up with this database.
Minnesota Secretary of State Steve Simon argues that the executive order violates the constitutional rights of states to set their own election rules.
The Constitution doesn't say anything about a president, this one or anyone, just kind of waving a magic wand in the Oval Office and decreeing stuff and trying to take over the election system.
After Minnesota and more than 20 other Democratic-led states sued over the executive order, the U.S. Supreme Court has now ruled this week that the Trump administration can move forward with the executive order for now.
Said, in fact, that they don't have the right to sue yet, and it's really a legal technicality. The states haven't been harmed yet, and voters haven't been harmed yet, because there has not been an election since the president issued this order.
Timothy Johnson is a professor of political science and law at the University of Minnesota.
The bottom line is the court said that executive order can go through for the time being. A lawsuit could happen in the future if someone is harmed.
So this really isn't settled at all.
This is not settled at all, and there will absolutely be additional lawsuits from these states.
In Minnesota, Secretary Simon has vowed to continue challenging the executive order.
So we're going to have that fight now.
But he says nothing will change in Minnesota's mail balloting system while the process plays out.
Nothing. So those thinking they want to vote by mail this election, which is a growing number of people the last several years, you should still consider that a secure and safe option.
Nearly a third of American voters used mail ballots in the 2024 presidential election. According to the Brookings Institution, cases of mail voting fraud are exceedingly rare, with about 4 cases of mail fraud in voting for every 10 million votes cast. Danny Spiewak, KARE 11 News.
Well, the Postal Service has already drafted rules for how the executive order would be implemented, and legal battles are expected to play out as they're implemented between now and the election, which is November 3rd. Today, St. Paul residents will get a chance to weigh in on the use of flock cameras across the city. The City Council is hosting a special public meeting at 4:30. Right now, there are 12 flock cameras in St. Paul. Police run 2 of them, while the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office runs the other 10. Supporters of the cameras say they help police solve crimes faster, but others say they're worried about who has access to the cameras and the data they store. Developing now, 2 people in Pennsylvania are dead after contracting measles, the first deaths from the disease this year in the U.S. Measles cases in our country have been on the rise, with the CDC reporting more than 2,700 already this year, the highest in 35 years. Officials say the 2 people who died in Pennsylvania were not vaccinated. Health experts blame declining vaccination rates for measles resurgence, which was considered eliminated in 2000. Measles is also spreading in parts of Iowa. Health officials there say 17 cases have been confirmed. And this morning, they're identifying a pizza ranch in southern Iowa as a possible exposure site. The restaurant says it increased cleaning to reassure customers. Stick with us. More news and weather's coming up after the break.